All right. Hello, everyone. So thank you, Sam, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We are College to Climate. My name is Lucas. I'm the community manager here. And as some of you know, and some of you, this is your first time at our monthly meetups. Basically, we host these events so that we give an opportunity for you all to meet each other and then also meet a featured speaker. This month we have Sam. And again, just thanks for joining in. As always, just feel free to always reach out to us. We're here, we're a community to support you in your climate journeys. We all are or were students, and we have this common passion to, make an impact. And so I'll hand it off to Sam. Sam, if you want to introduce yourself, and then if you
Yeah,
have, uh, the floor is yours.
cool. Thank you so much for having me, Lucas, and it's great to see you all. Thanks for making time with your, I imagine, busy evenings. And maybe just as we begin, I feel like Lucas said it, and I agree. I think the best part here, or anything, is community, and so seeing faces to a name is always helpful. So if you can, I'd encourage you to turn your cameras on and get to see each other and know each other a little bit more. Definitely a really nice community that Lucas has put together here. And grateful to be talking today. For context of myself, I'm one of the co-founders and GPs of Impact First Ventures, which is an early stage firm focused on investing in students and recent alumni, building exclusively in climate or healthcare, or we call it economic opportunity, which is ed tech, jobs training, things like that. Maybe I'll start off just a little bit brief bio myself for some more background and context, and then I'll do something fun. I'll pitch you on what our fund does in the same way we pitch to investors, and then I'll give you a little bit of an intro on our inspiration, and then can open up to questions for ways that we can be helpful, things that are on your mind. How do you start a startup, go zero from one? How do you raise funding right out of school? Anything like that. I'm happy to be helpful and take it wherever. But briefly on myself, I'm from right outside of Washington, D.C. in Bethesda, Maryland. Mom's a journalist and dad's a doctor. So very early on, the goal for me was always finding some way to have a career where you can do well, and ideally, where you can do well, where you can do good, ideally by doing well, and have kind of in different ways found myself to entrepreneurship. In school, worked at a high growth co-living startup in the affordable housing space, was also at Freddie Mac, which is one of the largest lenders in affordable housing as well, but kept coming back to entrepreneurs building at the early stages on campus. And that was inspiration for putting together Impact First. And so we'll talk more about that in a second, and just wanted to give you a brief uh, a brief bio.
Yeah, I'll open it first for the community, or anyone here. If you have questions, you can unmute or just write them in the chat. Otherwise, I
Good.
have questions.
I have a question, unless Jessica wants to go first.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just if you have thoughts on, since you're focusing on university founders, do you have thoughts on founders who who start building while they're still in school? How does that play out? Like, because I've heard opinions. I'm still in school. I graduate at the end of next year, and I'm building right now. I'm aiming to raise pre-seed or seed by February, and then work on and lay the foundations till the end of the year, and then graduate and go full time. So
Cool.
that's kind of my plan. But I'm wondering if you have thoughts on how that usually plays out. Do students find it hard
Um, yeah,
juggling?
I guess there's a few questions, or how do we see it and how do students see it? I think
Yeah.
if you're building something and you're looking to do venture funding, it's a full-time job and a half. If you're building something without venture funding, it's still a full-time and a half. And so it's a lot of work to build anything. And the way we think about it is we have two different types of checks that we write. We have this kind of like incubation capital, which is anywhere from 10K to 30K checks. And for that, it's less we would want our founders to be going full time right after write the check, but are okay with that being taking 6 months or something like that. The other is our 100 to 250K checks, and for that we look for founders who, once they've raised the capital, will very shortly be going full time. It's really hard to build and be a student. But maybe to your question, and I don't know if this is what you're getting at, but it's awesome to be building while you're a student. I think it gives you the most amount of optionality for when you graduate to either have a product that's working that has some customers that you can sell to VC and hopefully have some funding to go full time with, or not. It's much harder when you have a family and when you have a job and you're trying to build on the side.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of really specifics in my situation because but yeah, Jessica, I think had a question. Did it?
No, you can keep it going.
Okay, thank you. Because you just turned on your video all of a sudden. But in my case, for example, it's so I am on a student visa actually in the US, so international student. And for me, the thing is that I need to switch to an entrepreneur visa unless yeah, I need to switch to an entrepreneur visa by the time I graduate.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I will be forced to find a job in order to stay in the US. And if I find a job, then that takes a lot more time away from building a startup. So I'm
Check
trying.
out and we can talk more maybe specifically for you. And yeah, I'll have Lucas send you my email. But if you check out Unshackled VC, they're actually built exactly for that situation, which is helping immigrant founders both get funding and also apply for the I
This
forget the
is
name of the visa, but for the entrepreneurship visa. So
thanks, Sam.
worth checking out. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts or things that are on your guys' minds?
Well, I have a question since you're both up there for Krishna and Sam. You're both entrepreneurs, and I've something I've always wondered is how did you come up with ideas for your own startups? Is it something that you notice there's a gap and then you just go like, hey, this is something no one's ever done. I'm gonna do it myself? Or is it just you kind of just I don't know. I'm just curious, how did that come for you, both of you?
For me, it was just love of the idea just came to me. Like I never had a thought where I want to start a business and then what idea do I need to start the business? For me, it was I love this. I just want to do this, and it was just one whole holistic movement. So that's so because I was this summer I was interning in finance actually. So that's a bit related to what Sam was saying about students leaving consulting and instead of consulting and banking jobs doing startups. So I was doing an asset management internship. I was doing research on AI stocks at an asset management firm in New York. I had a finance internship in New York, and while doing my research, I discovered the environmental impacts of AI as part of my research. So I was doing research on AI
Mhm.
stocks. I researched their supply chains and turned out that 6% of all electricity usage in the US will go to AI by
Data
2026.
centers. Yeah.
And Microsoft's current carbon emissions are equal to bigger more than the total carbon emissions of the country of Panama, and that's just increasing. So I discovered all that, and I had been thinking of just doing a startup for my livelihood before that. So I was thinking of doing a startup in financial education before that, but and that at that time it was just like my feeling that if I do a startup, then I can express my vision. I can express my vision in life more freely than if I was doing a job. Like you can't express your own vision if you're doing a job. And if you have a vision, then the best way to express that vision is to start a company.
To
So I
create.
had been thinking of financial education initially. At that time it was the idea was just yeah, maybe not. But then when I
Krishna,
discovered
so maybe it seems like both this idea of wanting to like a creative expression, like you wanted to build something, and also you saw a problem that you wanted to solve, which I feel like is often the case for builders, which is there's probably a desire to solve something, to be a problem solver, and then there's a problem that emerges that is interesting enough to solve. When we're thinking about it, for if we'll only invest in companies where they're solving a problem that's so huge that there's essentially like a billion dollar plus market attached with it. And that's like the venture mindset is these huge problems, or maybe problems that don't look huge but have huge markets attached to them, that you can build a huge business in. And so that's what we look for. And so yeah, the company that we invest in that's creating synthetic fuel for maritime shipping. There's each ship has carry. That's like a $100 million plus market. Each ship
Yeah.
itself carries about $1 billion in cargo on the big cargo ships. And so looking for really, really big markets, and also looking for entrepreneurs who are solving a problem versus starting something just to start something.
Right. Yeah, no, that just always catch my curiosity. Like entrepreneurs, I feel like it's a whole different type of human, but no, I'm glad to get both your perspectives. And I'm just curious, everyone else here, has anyone ever thought of being an entrepreneur? Like I'm gonna raise my hand because I have, but I just don't have that idea. So yeah, thanks for answering. Yeah. See Larson, Sherry.
Larson, what are you thinking about these days? Or yeah, what brought you here?
Culture climate.
Love it.
That's one of them. But yeah, I don't know. I've had a few ideas for startups. Nothing like too concrete to report on. But yeah, I'm sure there's some good ideas out here in the crowd.
Sweet.
For anyone who doesn't know, Marcy is like the original co-founder of College to Climate, so just adding color there.
Nice.
Yeah. One thing I think Sammy brought up a really good point about whether you are building while you're in school or just going to school full time. It's just like good prep for I think whatever comes next. I think I would just double click on that. Like I'm sure everybody's on this call because they want to build something, and maybe they're looking for funding. But I guess like take my 2 cents would be like take um, just be aware that like if you don't end up starting a company or you don't build something, just like having that experience that you did like work on this project while you're in school is super valuable for applying to other climate jobs. We hear that from in running college climate, we hear that from talking to recruiters in the climate space all the time. So if you are looking for jobs, outside of building your own thing, like definitely leverage whatever you are building in that job search process.
Totally.
I just kind of have a question just about like I'm not a I don't have any finance background and I'm not like a entrepreneur or anything. So I'm just sort of just curious about this side of like climate work. Um, like what is the process of like um like a someone has like a startup or something that they want to get invested in? What is sort of the process of that? Is it like I'm also kind of interested in general of like learning like a little bit of grant writing and stuff. So I'd be curious about like what you look for about that kind of stuff. Like I'm not again, I don't like have an idea or like I don't know if I'm like gonna become an entrepreneur, but I'm curious about like what the finance side of this kind of work is like and what the process is.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's effectively it's several different rounds of funding that each get bigger, and I can like give some names to them and give you approximations of what those different rounds look like. But different rounds of funding that each get bigger until either the company dies and fails, which is often the case, or B is acquired, or C goes public. There's an IPO. So those are kind of the three different outcomes of building, and I would say the vast majority have died before any successful exit. The earliest stage rounds, like an angel round, a pre-seed round, a seed round, all range from like 50K could be your full angel round to at like a $1 million valuation, at a $2.5 million valuation, a $5 million valuation, to a pre-seed round that is around $500 to $1 million at anywhere from usually like 5 to 8, but there's all these different numbers. Like it can be much larger as well. And then there's a seed round, which is traditionally anywhere from like 15 to $30 million, and you're raising there like 2 to 3, $4 to $5 million. The rounds are a little bit just everyone wants to have an earlier round that has more money at a higher valuation, and so you can't take it so seriously. But that's kind of the progression. It's not so different than grant writing, where if you're applying for a grant, you show some progress, some traction, and then this vision of where you want to go and why your team is the team to execute on it. And so a pitch deck from a founder usually looks pretty similar, which is here's the problem, here's how we're solving it, here's why the team that we're solving, here's why we're the team that's going to solve it, and then here's why this is an opportunity to make a lot of money.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think I'm interested in like learning grant writing as a skill just because it's so like I'm looking like maybe nonprofit work is sort of like one of my like thoughts of where I would want my career to go. And I know that's like a super helpful skill for that kind of thing. I know it's not like exactly related, but that's very interesting and knowing how much like the rounds and stuff, that's very interesting.
Yeah. I think grant writing is great. It's all just a different part of the like I guess for you the climate capital stack. And there's a bunch of different ways to get funding for startups, and not all startups need to get venture funding. Some would benefit more from like a DOE grant or from foundation funding. And so it's good. They're just different ways to get money to people building things that matter. Christian, a good question. You said piggybacking on that, would you have thoughts on a VC raising in climate is harder or easier than grant raising? It depends what you're building. I would say most companies probably don't fall into the venture, the VC backable space. And so if you don't fall into that space, it's definitely better to go other routes. If you do fall in that space, I think at least in the beginning, I think it's more of a question of if you want like dilutive funding or non-dilutive funding, if you want to bring on certain VCs to be your partners for the next 10 years as you're building hopefully a successful company or not. I don't know. I don't really do a lot of grant writing, but I know that's often like a several month process. A VC process can be anywhere from like a week to maxing out at 2 months. You wouldn't go much longer than that.
Sam, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
When you have these entrepreneurs pitching to you, what is one thing you would say that you like seeing in a pitch? Is there like a specific attitude or like say like a way they present their startup that really captivates you and you say that you think this is a good team to build a startup and you want to invest in them? Is there like one quality that you look for?
Um, there's so many things. I would say one thing that you need to have, well, maybe along with a really big market. And I would say if it doesn't have that, it's like a binary, it's just not interesting. But alongside that, I would say, in a word, it would be an exceptional team or an exceptional founder, which means a lot of things. And it's clarity of thought. So how clear are you laying out both the short-term vision and the long-term vision and the steps you have to go? Ability to execute is another one. And so like, what have you built previously? How does it demonstrate your ability to execute? A metric that Sam Altman talks about is the speed at which you respond to an email as a metric for ability to execute, and just to move fast and ship things and not wait to present and talk a lot, but just start working on things.
Yeah.
But I think when you're presenting in a pitch, what comes across is this clarity of thought, this succinctness. I think confidence and ambition is also helpful. You want to bet on someone, and that person has to raise a lot of money after you for investing early. They have to recruit a team that's going to risk their livelihoods on this person, and then they have to hire. They have to raise funds and they have to build a product. And so you want someone who has the presence and energy to do that.
Superhuman. That's good.
100%.
And the email part, definitely not me. I do take my good time writing those emails.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a good push to be quick.
Yeah. Any questions right off the bat?
I would disagree on that, Lucas. I think you're pretty speedy.
There's always room for improvement, right? Not, what's the point?
I like that quote though. That's a good one to get a little motivation.
Yeah.
100%. I'll try to find it. I'll send it to Lucas after he can send it along.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything else? I mean, no need to go longer if people don't have questions.
Hi, so I have a small question. Again,
Yeah.
I'm not someone who's really into entrepreneurship yet, but I wanted to know if it's something that I could possibly, you know, find myself in the future because I come from a computer science background and I'm really looking to get into climate tech space. But I feel
Cool.
that to be an entrepreneur, you need some sort of background in that space, to actually identify potential pain points. And how do you actually evaluate if a particular pain point could be solved by you, or if it needs a startup, if it needs a company running to, actually make it happen, and that you have a customer base who are willing to pay for it? I feel like that there's a whole lot of research and background work that goes into it, but I'm not exactly 100% sure how it goes.
Sweet. Well, if you're looking to get into climate tech, well, you've obviously found the right community for that. So that's awesome with Lucas and Larson. I maybe one answer to that, and I think there's a bunch, is just MVPing it. So creating like a minimal viable product and testing out whether or not there is a market for whatever you think there's a problem that you're solving is. And so one example is if you think if you're trying to build a community and make money off of connecting students to climate opportunities before you even build a whole organization, before you even bring in companies that you're trying to sell to, if you just create a landing page for students to sign up for your community or platform, and then if you have enough signups and you say, okay, so this was the MVP of what I'm building, this community. Obviously, we have interest from the student perspective. Now let me see if we have interest from the employer perspective, and you do a similar thing, and then you can have a sense of whether those would be MVPs for if you're building college to climate. There's I'll send you a link to it. There's a book called The Lean Startup, which if you're interested or even thinking about entrepreneurship or really like any sort of problem solving, I would highly recommend it. But it talks about the idea of just constantly iterating and building small MVPs to validate hypotheses and then to test those hypotheses and then to iterate off of that.
That's a good starting point. Thank you.
Of course. I don't know. Lucas and Larson, you want to talk about how you went from developing some MVPs to actually building something?
We do also have one other question for you, Sam, in the chat from Sherry, if you want to go
Cool.
into that one.
Thank you. Sam, as you are building how do you convince LPs and startups from two different angles to work with your team? It's only a few years out of college. It's a great question. It's been really hard. I would say, honestly, by far, persistence is like the main driver there. You need to have so many no's to get any yes. And so on a successful day of venture fundraising, even for if you've raised a nice fund one or a nice fund two, if you have 1 in 4 LPs say yes, you're doing well. And so for us, that's even magnified even more. And so I would say persistence is like the biggest driver. Once we had our first check and once we got some bigger names involved, it's easier. And so we went from having raised like 250K to then raising 3 to then 5. And like the end of that journey came much more quickly than the beginning of it. From startups, it's a little bit easier, but also harder. The best startups, VC is totally a commodity, and they can get money from anywhere. So it's convincing them why you are going to be there. We're a good partner, and for us, I think persistence is also an answer there. We say we're going to be your hustle partner in the room, and there's also some values alignment that we present to. I don't know. How do you think about it? How would you present it if you were in our shoes? Gotcha. I imagine you are in a quiet space and can't talk. So I got your thought and it's a really good one, and I'll be processing that after the call. Thank you for sharing it.
It's great telepathy. And there's another question in the chat. And if there are no other questions, we can make it the last one, and then we can take a screenshot if everyone's okay with it.
Last question, in terms of market size, what are you typically looking for in terms of the founders calculation? This is like the classic VC response. And for us, it's like, yeah, it is approximately go for, but you want to like at least $1 billion market, and the bigger, the better. Um, if not, it could be a really good business. You can make a lot of money from it. It's just venture funding isn't the solution for it. And the reason for that is any venture investment should be able to return the whole fund. And so you need really big outcomes to return funds. We have a smaller fund, and so we can have a little bit less big outcome to return it. But ideally, you're investing in companies that can have a 1x, 2x, 3x of your fund.
Well, thank you, Sam. Look, I think this was as much as a learning experience for me than for everyone else, I hope. And uh, really cool what you're doing. Like, honestly, I think
Appreciate it.
especially investing in like college students, it shows that you have passion for like the young talent. And what you said about wanting to smart people build things instead of their usual route that they go, from, not that's bad, but like the consulting route or the just those pathways that kind of change that passion perspective. So anyway, just thank you for spending time with us tonight. Uh, and I don't know if you have any last words before we conclude.
No, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, love what College of Climate is up to, and think very highly of you all, and of Caitlin, who connected us. And so let me know how it can be helpful to you, or anyone here. I can put my email in the chat, and feel free to send me a message what you're working on if I could be helpful. It's great to meet you all.
Yeah, awesome. And let's take a quick screenshot. We always do this as tradition for every
Love it.
meetup. So count of three, everyone give your biggest smile, or if you want to be sad, that's your choice. But anyway, so okay, ready? 3, 2, 1. Yeah, UG for the last minute save. Let's go. Thank you, everyone. I'll stop.